Hi, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of our new series, The Road to Glory, How to Become a Prism Chef. In this episode, we will be focusing on the YeezySupply module, as this month and the next month are pretty jam-packed with releases. So we want to make sure that our users are, or actually fully understand how to use the module and then are using it to their full potential. So the format of this video is basically we're going to start off by showing you guys how to create a YS task group. I'm going to abbreviate YeezySupply as YS throughout the video just because it's a pretty long word. So we're going to show you how to create the YS task group, then show you how to create the tasks, and then we're going to show you how to correctly set up your harvesters. And then finally, we're going to do a Q&A section where we're going to address a lot of the questions that you guys submitted in the questionnaire. And once again, we do appreciate everyone who takes the time to submit a question. It kind of helps us understand what pitfalls and what sections of a certain module might confuse users, and then that allows us to then pass on that information to the developers, who then are able to make updates and make Prism even more user-friendly. So thank you everyone for once again submitting your questions. All right, so let's start off with showing you guys how to create the task group. So your best friend whenever you're creating tasks is always having the release guide up. For a lot of the bigger drops, we will definitely provide release guides, and those will be posted inside the Discord. So for example, let me go ahead and pull up tomorrow's release. So this is an example of a release guide. Did not mean to click that. As you can see, it is for the Yeezy 450 Cloud release guide. All right, so let's get back to the main goods. We're going to go ahead and create a task group by clicking that button. We're going to go ahead and name it whatever you want. For tomorrow is the 450 Cloud, so I will just call it 450 Cloud. All right, now you can click on the drop-down menu and scroll. I personally just like to type out the site I'm looking for, and as you can see, it's right there, YeezySupply. All right, so now you can see that little notification, task group created successfully, so we're ready to roll. All right, so the first thing you're going to want to do is take a look at your monitor settings. So to start off, there's the monitor input. It also gives you an example of what that format or what it should look like. So as you can see, for YeezySupply, we actually used the product SKU. So in the release guide for the 450s, this is the product SKU right here. For example, if I were to accidentally use the link, let's go ahead, and that's just the release guide link, but as you can see, it automatically says invalid input. So it kind of gives you a little warning if you're using the wrong format. And there we go. So nothing's red, we're good to go. Proxy list, you're going to go ahead and choose whichever proxy list you want to use for your monitor. I personally think it's best to use really good quality ISPs. But for this example, we'll just use, let's see, we're just going to use combined. All right, so, and then the delay, this is your monitor delay settings. We recommend that you just leave all your delays default. Whatever the bot tells you or whatever it opens up with, which is going to be 3000, just leave it and don't touch it. All right, next, you have your CAPTCHA settings. So this is basically the source of your CAPTCHA, like how are you going to solve your CAPTCHAs for YS. We definitely recommend only two options for YS. It's number one is going to be the default, which is your in-bot harvesters, and the next section we're going to show you how to set that up. And then second is autosolve. So autosolve is a feature of AYCD, and this is kind of for more advanced users. We definitely recommend if you're starting out and you don't really know what AYCD is, I probably wouldn't use it right off the beginning, but definitely once you start getting a little more comfortable, you can go ahead and check out that software and see if it works for you. I personally always just use the default harvester. All right, next we have statistics. So here are your statistics. I like to keep this up during the drop, but for right now I'm just setting up. I don't really need to take a look at it. Next you have scheduling. So tomorrow's release is at 9 a.m. So if I wanted to, I can set the time to start at 9 a.m. However, for YS, we actually don't recommend using this, mainly because you want to set up your, or you want to start your task when we tell you to. The main reason being is you want to make sure that you start your task when the sale starts. So YS might put up a queue, but that doesn't mean that they're actively selling pairs. And if you start too early, you actually hurt your chances of passing Q. So just keep that in mind. And most of the times, a support member will ping in the Discord group when to start your task. So definitely have your Discord up as well. And we see this every time during a drop where everyone is asking, do we start yet? Do we start yet? Do we start yet? You can either choose to listen to your cook group, or you can choose to just keep an eye out on the Prism Discord, and we will know when it's the best time for you guys to start. So we promise you don't need to keep asking in general. Just keep an eye out in the Release Guys channel, and we will definitely notify you. All right, so moving on, how to create your task. Just go ahead and click this plus button. All right, in the beginning, you have your profiles. I personally have a profile group called YS that I already created. So we're gonna, we won't use that for this example. We'll just use test profile. But essentially, they'll just create a task for each of my profiles that I have in that group. All right, next you have your delay. Once again, we're not gonna touch that delay. We're gonna keep it at 3,000. Then you have your task quantity. For this example, let's just use 10, which means it's gonna create 10 tasks. Proxy list, let's go to combined again. There we go. And then for your sizes, tomorrow's release is a pretty good shoe in terms of resell. So I'm just gonna go for random sizing. But for example, if you just wanted to go for base sizes, you got 4, 4.5, 5, 5, 6, 6.5. And you just can go ahead and click those individual sides, and basically Prism will then only try to check out those sizes. But let's go ahead and go back to random. And there you go. Now you have 10 tasks, and you're basically ready to start, and you're set up for the drop, except there's one last thing, which is the harvesters, and that's what we're going to show you guys how to do. All right, so now we're going to show you how to create your harvesters for the YS task group. First thing you're going to do is click this little gear icon. Then we're going to go click on harvesters right here. All right, so now that we're on the harvesters tab, I'm going to go ahead and click create. This will automatically create a harvester for you, but you're not done yet. You got to make sure that you first go to type and change it to YeezySupply. And then next, you want to make sure that if you farm your CAPTCHAs, or your Gmails using proxies on like a software like AYCD, Kylan, or Kodai, or Essentials, make sure you use the same proxy. It'll only help your score. If not, let's say you're just running on local, go ahead and you're going to click the G button, which is going to open up your Google login. Log into your credentials here. Once you see that you're logged in, you can close out of this window. And then before the drop, you want to make sure that then you click this button, which will pop out the actual harvester, and you want to make sure that this is open. It doesn't have to be in the front, but just make sure that it's open and not actually closed. All right, and then for YS in the guides, we definitely recommend that you have at least 1 to 2 harvesters. I personally like to have as many open as I can that have a 0.9 V3 reCAPTCHA score. So just keep that in mind. Don't just plug in, bad Gmails or Gmails that aren't farmed or harvested or trained. You're just going to hurt your chances. So only use good quality 0.9 V3 reCAPTCHA Gmails. And a lot of you guys might be new and wondering, like, how do you actually know if you have a good score? Best way to do it is I will post a link in the description, but there's this little reCAPTCHA demo website where the moment you go to it, let's go ahead, it'll actually show you and do a little test. And as you can see right here, it says 0.9 score. So that means the Gmail that I'm currently logged into on my Google Chrome browser has a 0.9 score, so I know that Gmail is good to go. All right? And we'll have a link in the description so you guys can test it out yourselves. I definitely recommend do not test it too much, or else you're just going to hurt your score. So just test it once, the night before, the day before, it's good to go, and then you can plug it into your harvester. All right, the other option is if you're going to not use the inbot default harvester and you choose to use autosolve, just go ahead and choose autosolve, and then you're going to grab your API key and your access token from the AYCD dashboard. We're not going to go too much into this. We have a specific guide on it, a written guide in our help section of Prism. So just make sure you check out those guides if you have any questions setting that up. All right, so let's go back. We have a physical one. Let's pretend it's logged in, and we have this good to go. So now that you have your harvesters open, remember at least 1 to 2. The more you put in doesn't hurt. Just make sure that they have 0.9 scores. And once you have your harvester open, you're basically ready to go. All you need then is to just have your task created. And once we tell you guys when to start the task, when the sale started, go ahead and start your task and you should be good to go. While during the drop, what I'm going to do is I'm going to film a live cop tomorrow, hopefully, if everything goes well. And that way you guys can kind of see what we're doing during the drop and be able to adjust your setup that way. And once again, during the drop, don't be afraid if a capture doesn't show up here. It's an invisible V3, which means that Prism is solving it on its own and nothing actually has to be solved like a Shopify capture or anything like that. All right, so next we're gonna move into the Q&A section. All right, so the first question that we got is how many tasks should we run for the best chance at copying? This is, you know, we get asked this a lot. It's always on footside drops, YeezySupply drops, you name it. We always get this question. And once again, the answer is the same. There is no perfect number of tasks per person. It's going to be dependent on your setup, and there's going to be several limiting factors. Number one, proxies, right? How many proxies do you have? You want to maintain at least a 1-to-1 proxy to task ratio. With YeezySupply, I really find that it comes to quality over quantity. When I run really good, you know, DC or ISP clean proxies that I know are good quality, I pass a lot faster than I do if I'm using like Resis or if I'm using, you know, maybe lower quality DC proxies. So when it comes down to that, like just make sure that you're finding the best quality proxy possible. Obviously, we're not going to give any specific recommendations, but go ask your cut group, go ask other users what works for them, go check out the successful setups, you know, channel in the Discord. A lot of people post what they use, so that might be a good idea of where to start. Next is going to be your system limitations, right? I personally have a, you know, pretty good spec PC, and I can run thousands of tasks if I would like. I personally don't like to do that. I just like to kind of go, once again, quality over quantity for YeezySupply. And also, I'm running on a local, like my local router, which is, I have Fios gigabit, but still, one of the limiting things is if I am running thousands of tasks, what eventually is going to happen is I'm going to overload my network, which is going to create a bunch of proxy errors, which means basically my network is going to go out. And a lot of times during drops, a lot of people run local and they don't keep that in mind. So they might run, you know, hundreds of tasks, thousands of tasks on their local network. And then what you do is just overload your router, which then causes it to crash or disconnect. And then you just basically lost all your progress and it's going to take you a bit to get back up. So to combat this, a lot of people who, you know, are knowledgeable will buy servers and run them on servers because a lot of times servers have good network connection and are able to handle that amount of traffic. So definitely keep that in mind when you're setting up. Another thing that might limit you is also maybe the number of Gmails that you have that are good quality, right? I generally like to recommend anywhere from one harvester might be up to like 50 tasks, give or take. There's no real perfect number. We still are kind of testing, and we don't know if there's an actual number that exists that's a perfect number. But we generally like to say one harvester is probably good for 50 tasks. Just keep that in mind. All right, so the next question we had is how many harvesters do I need open, and what is the perfect harvester to task ratio? We kind of answered this in the last segment, but a minimum of 1 to 2 harvesters that are logged into 0.9 Gmails is required. And there is no perfect ratio. We always like to say the more the merrier. If you have more 0.9 Gmails, why not have them entered into a separate harvester and have each harvester open? It definitely won't hurt. And it kind of segues into the next question, which is Does having more harvesters with 0.9 Gmails increase splash pass rate or efficiency of any kind? And the answer is always going to be yes to that. The main reason being is that if one of your Gmails, for example, lowers in score, then at least you have other Gmails that are still logged in that have a 0.9 score, and those can be used, which will then assist other tasks to get through. So the more the merrier, it can't hurt. So the next question we have is, does the YS module fully support AYCD autosolve? And yes, it does, but we only recommend it to what we would call power users. And how we define this is basically people who are familiar with botting, who are experienced, who have used AYCD autosolve before, and are well prepared for drops. Mainly because during a drop, you may have to, kind of change things up dependent on what we post in the Discord. So we might, suggest you guys to stop your task, for example, if, for example, like the sales pauses and it stops. We might tell you guys, oh, okay, no need to run tasks. If you have to worry about two different softwares at the same time and you're a beginner user, you might miss that notification or you might not be paying attention. So just focus on using the inbot harvesters if you're kind of beginning and trying to get a hang of how to, really hone in your YS skills with Prism. If you are a power user, go ahead. AYCD autosolve has been working amazing for people, who are running hundreds and thousands of tasks. It's more manageable for them because they're used to it and they know how to use it. So if you want to learn more about AYCD autosolve, you can go ahead and ask other users, ask your cook group. I'm sure there's a lot of guides out there, and we do have our written guide on how to set it up. All right, so next question is, what is the best way to tell when Gmails loaded on YS harvesters V3 scores drop below 0.9 while running? And unfortunately, when you're running with Prism, there's really nothing that you're going to be solving. So it's not like, a Shopify CAPTCHA or a Supreme CAPTCHA where eventually when your Gmail trust score diminishes, the CAPTCHAs get harder. There's going to be nothing like that. So it's kind of hard to tell, which is why, once again, we always suggest have as many harvesters with 0.9 Gmails logged in. The more you have, the better it'll work, the better you'll pass, and that way you're not relying on just 1 to 2. However, 1 to 2 is the minimum. If you don't have anything open, you're not going to pass. All right, so next question is, will Prism have a special mode that only requires one harvester window open? And, that is something maybe that other bots have. As of this point right now, we don't really have anything that we're going to implement that's only going to require one harvester window. There's no promises of anything like that because we think that the solution that we have right now is working well. And if we find, more improvements to be made, we could always add it later. But for now, it is not something where you can just only have one harvester open and then expect to run thousands of tasks and get through. And then the final question regarding harvesters, if we plan on using two different bots, can we be logged onto the same Gmail for both? Answer is no. You're going to be requesting, to solve the invisible V3 CAPTCHAs now 2 times more. And what you're going to do is also, for example, if it's not logged in from the same IP, then you're also requesting double the amount of CAPTCHAs off of 2 different IPs, which is then just going to plummet your trust score and your V3 score. So definitely do not recommend that. Once again, this is one of those things where you kind of have to pay to play. And if you don't have those 0.9 Gmails, go find a provider that you can purchase from. And I'm sure, other users or cook groups can suggest which providers work best. All right, so moving on, now we have the questions regarding proxies. So the first question is, the proxies didn't work on Prism, but worked on other bots. And the question is, why did that happen? And honestly, this is kind of too vague of a question. We don't really know, what was the error that you're getting? If you tell us kind of what the task or what the status is, we can definitely let you know. For example, something where you might get proxy error, that might be because that we talked about earlier is that you might be overloading your network. If you're running thousands of tasks, your network might be able to only handle so much traffic, and other bots might not have a status or task status that shows that, but we do where it says proxy error. And at that time, you might want to check, oh, am I overloading my network? All right, next question we have is, what proxies tend to get you through the queue faster? And what we personally find, and what I, from my experience, have found with YS is really good quality ISP proxies work well. You know, these aren't cheap. A lot of times they're like $1.80 to $2 per proxy. But once again, it comes to quality over quantity with YeezySupply. I will run one task group strictly with just ISP proxies, and then another task group with resis. I don't like to mix them in the same proxy list and run them in the same task group, because then I don't really know what's working, right? If I have one group that's just ISPs and those tasks seem to get through a lot quicker, for the next drop, I know, okay, these ISPs worked well for me. And the same thing goes for if you have multiple ISP providers. Why not create multiple task groups? It's not like the YeezySupply is like the Shopify module where you're constantly having to maybe change delays. So it might not hurt to just have a different task group for each proxy provider so you know which one works well for you and which one didn't. All right, next question is, how much data would be used in a 15 to 30 minute drop per 100 tasks? Honestly, there's no exact calculation. It's not going to be too data intensive. So we definitely recommend, if you have resis, use them in a different task group. Why not? But honestly, I don't have a calculation to figure out how much data that is. Well, only thing I could suggest is go buy a gigabit of data and run the amount of tasks you want and see how long it takes for your data to run out. And then finally, the last question is proxy recommendations. Do you have any? I don't officially have any proxy companies that we're going to recommend as a company. For that question, go check out the Successful Setups channel in Prism. Go ask other users what works for them. Go ask your cook groups, or just go around Twitter and see what proxy companies a lot of people are having success with. You got to start somewhere, and we don't have an official proxy company that we're going to recommend. So go ahead and go ask and figure out what works for you and test it out. Just because, we get this question a lot where people say, oh, my friend has using the same proxy company. Why is it not working for me? There could be a multitude of answers there. A proxy company might have several different variations of proxy programs or services that they might provide. One might be Sprint based, one might be AT&T based. There's all different variables that go in. So we get that question a lot where, hey, this person's using this company, why is it not working for us? Once again, that's probably a question that's better suited towards your proxy company that you're using. All right, so now we're going to move on to kind of general questions. And the first question was, how resource intensive is the module compared to other ones like foot sites? And it's definitely going to be a little less intensive, I think, in my point of view. But once again, we don't have like the perfect amount of tasks to spec or PC spec ratio. It's going to be one of those things that you're just going to have to try out. And, a lot of botting is just trial and error, just figuring out what works for you. And then once you figure that out, just try to expand it and increase your knowledge around that. All right, next question is, how do cookies work when botting YS? Do I need to generate manually? Answer to that is no, we handle all the cookies on our end. There's nothing you have to do in terms of harvesting cookies. They're all provided for you. And then the final question is, how do you get your Gmails to 0.9 status? So number one is just activity. It's just making it seem like a real human being is logged into that Gmail and using it. A lot of times you'll find that your personal emails that you use a lot from your day-to-day activities are probably already 0.9 status. The ones that you watch YouTube videos with while logged in, those are probably 0.9 status. And you can go ahead and use a link in the description that we talked about earlier that can help test it. I definitely want to warn you, do not overtest once again. Another way to get a 0.9 status is using, farming your Gmail farmers, like AYCD has the one-click feature or software, which will train your Gmails, which will basically mimic human activity and you can use those to train your Gmails and get them to 0.9 status. There's others like Essentials, Kylan, a bunch of different software out there that you can go check out and ask your cook group about. And then finally, you can always buy 0.9 Gmails from providers where basically they're training them and farming on them even before you buy them. So then by the time you buy them, they're already at 0.9 test or V3 reCAPTCHA score, and they're good to go for a drop. So yeah, there's a multitude of ways, and those are kind of just some of them. Now we're going to go and kind of address the questions where people were having issues during last drop. So the first question is, I was able to add a bunch of items to cart, but each one failed and could not generate enough cookies. What exactly happened? And, you know, I would say, number one, you need clean, good proxies. And also, this was one of the earlier YS drops that we were testing. So as we go on, we're improving our Akamai solution. So hopefully around this drop or the Cloud 450 drop and future drops, you'll probably see better task statuses that exactly tell you what's happening. And hopefully you'll be able to pass more. Number two, the second question is, when tasks loop on setting cookies, is that a bot issue or proxy issue? A lot of the time, it's going to be a proxy issue where your proxies just aren't or getting blocked by YS, or you don't have good 0.9 quality Gmails logged in. Next question is, how come my 0.9 harvesters pass slower than others? Was it just luck for other people? And, you know, it's not just because you have 0.9 harvesters logged in or Gmails logged into harvesters. They could be doing a multitude of other stuff. They could be having better quality ISP proxies. They could be having even more harvesters open that are logged in with 0.9 Gmails. It could be a whole different type of thing. So if you're having a ton of like errors in terms of your tasks, definitely go ahead and open a ticket and we can take a look and try to answer your question. Next question that we have is kind of almost on the same topic, it looks like. My Gmails are all 0.9. Why are some people getting through on so many tasks and checking out while I've only gotten through on at least one? Once again, it comes down to good quality proxies, good quality Gmails, and how many Gmails you have logged in. And also, are you overloading your connection? Next question is, what flags fraud on YS profiles? I would have hit about 30, but I only hit one because I kept getting payment refused. This happens across all bots. Is there a way around this error? I'm not sure what to do. Kind of a long question. So we'll address the first part, is what kind of causes fraud alerts to happen on YS. And I honestly, even like cook groups have struggled with this question and is trying to figure it out. But if you use a specific profile more than once, maybe the first couple checkouts might happen, but after that, the payment processor might trigger it as fraud because of the velocity. It's seeing a lot of charges being made to a specific card and address or information, and that's what might be causing all the payment declines. So for example, if you're using different cards but using the same information, they might kind of consider that as fraud. On the Prism standpoint, we don't have an official answer to that because even cook groups don't really know. But what we can only suggest is try to have as many unique profiles as possible. Try not to repeat any information, and you'll find a lot of times then you'll have a lot more success. Towards the end of a drop, when stock starts to diminish, you'll start to see a lot more failed carts, and that's because by the time you're trying to submit payment and you're going through the checkout flow, it's already sold out. So that's why you might see payment failures toward the end of the drop. And then the final question is, I had a lot of failed carts and a lot of errors on submitting payment stage, and it doesn't happen on other bots. What happened? Honestly, we can't even say, we don't really know what other bots do, so we don't really know how to answer that question. But kind of going back to what I just spoke about is that a lot of times, by the time it's sold out, it'll give you payment failures because you won't be able to submit payment or submit your order fast enough. And honestly, we can't really answer that without knowing we need a little more details to answer that question. So if you are consistently having that issue, go ahead and feel free to open a ticket. All right, guys. So that is basically the end of the Q&A section and the end of this video. We hope it answered a lot of questions that you guys had, and hopefully you guys are on the road to becoming better Prism users and eventually get that chef status inside of Discord. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you next time.